All right, hello Neo-Genians, welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we are talking about the secret behind the court cards in tarot, which are some of the most misunderstood and mysterious cards in the deck, and how they are the key or engine behind manifestation. This is going to be an incredibly important video, so make sure you stick around to the end. It's going to be great. So we're going to get started right away, but as always, make sure that you hit like and subscribe. Let's get this information out there, help wake up the world, spread some enlightenment. And if you want to help out even more, become a member. You can get access to our exclusive members videos. You can get access to free downloads on alchemy and inner transformation, a bunch of stuff, and it helps out a lot. So consider that. You can hit the join button below to see all the different perks you can get access to. If you haven't already, check out my books. If you like what we talk about here in terms of reaching higher states of consciousness, check out my book, Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation, which is a new psychology for a new consciousness. Let's see. Make sure you give me a follow over on Spotify. Links to all of those things are in the description of this video. All right, my friends, let's get started here. So we are talking about tarot in terms of manifestation, and how to understand tarot, and not only how to understand tarot, but tarot in terms of the Kabbalistic tree of life and manifestation. So this is a video in a series. If you haven't seen the other videos in the series, that's okay. This video is perfectly fine as a standalone video, but if you want to dive even more into it, check out the other video in the series. Okay, so where we concluded last time was we took a look at the trees of life, the four worlds, which represents fire, water, air, and earth, and how the minor arcana is represented on each of these trees of life and represents a certain stage of unfoldment in the manifestation process. So once again, in the process of manifestation, each one of these trees and cards represents a stage in the unfoldment of the manifestation process. But today, we're going to dive into the court cards. So, like I said, some people consider them to be the most mysterious or difficult to interpret cards in the deck. So, what they are, what are they? What are they exactly? So, first of all, in typical tarot readings, court cards often represent you, different aspects of your personality, or sometimes other people in your life. But what we're doing here is not a traditional interpretation. What we're doing is we're using them to understand manifestation. So in this system of manifestation, the court cards represent you and the different sides of you that drive the entire process of manifesting your goals. So think of these cards as like the engine powering everything from behind the scenes. And so to actually represent this, if you take a look, we have the four trees, and behind the four trees are the four court cards. Now, one thing that I want to make clear, so we have the four court cards represented on each of these trees. Now, one thing that I want to make clear is that they aren't literally on the back of the tree of life. They're on the same side, because technically on the other side of the tree of life is the tree of death, which we're not talking about today. We'll talk about it another time. But to represent it just on these items that I have, I put it on the back, because otherwise you'd have overlapping cards and it would get really messy. And I think this is a really good way to be able to understand it. Okay. So, like I said, you can picture the court cards as what lies behind the scenes, behind the process that powers everything, as aspects of you engaged in the process of manifestation and unfolding the process of manifestation. Now, once again, if you're new to this, or in any case, if this sounds a little confusing at first, just go with it, because it will click as we go forward. It just takes a little time to get immersed in what we're doing here. So the tree of life is essentially acting like a system of cabinets or folders that allows us to organize information. The tree of life is like the structure, and the cards are like the content that we put in the structure to give it meaning. So the tree of life helps us organize the cards, and the cards hold the meanings or the lessons. So let's talk about the court cards. So each of the court cards corresponds to a specific sephira or Sephira on the tree of life. Okay? So the kings, each of the kings is associated to Chokhmah on the tree of life. So Chokhmah or Hokmah is traditionally considered the father or masculine principle. Queens are linked to Binah and considered the feminine or motherly principle. Knights are linked to Tiferet or Tifereth and are associated with things like the synthesis of everything else, or the center. That's what Tiferet is associated with, not necessarily knights, but Tiferet or Tiferet is associated with the center or the sun or the synthesis or an organizing principle. Now, pages, and by the way, this is going to be important in a second, pages in a lot of tarot decks are called princesses, okay? But in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which is the deck that we're using, they're pages. So pages are linked to Malchut or Malkuth, and Malkuth represents the daughter or the feminine divine presence or the Shekinah that manifests in the world. Or you can just understand Malkuth as the physical world, but it's usually associated with the a feminine principle in Kabbalah. So as you can see here, the court cards are associated with a family. It has a sort of family dynamic, but not in terms of the Trinity, right? So in terms of the Trinity, you usually have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Gnosticism, you have the Father, the Mother, and the Son, which is better. But in here, we don't have a Trinity. We have a quaternity of Father, Mother, Son, and Daughter, or King, Queen, Knight, and Page, or Princess. And each corresponds to a critical point on the Tree of Life, these very important parts of the Tree of Life. So you can see the Mother and Father, King and Queen, form the supreme pair of opposites at the top. These opposite principles. The Sun represents the center point, the organizing principle in Tiferet, and the daughter, or the princess, or the page, is associated with the final manifestation or the product of everything that comes before Malkuth. So just to be clear, right now what I am doing is explaining what the Sephirot or the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life mean, not necessarily what the kings and queens and knights and pages mean yet. We will in a second. But here, I'm just kind of giving a little overview at first. Now, kind of an interesting thing that we can do here. And by the way, some people might be like, why don't you just come out and say what these things are? This is because what we are doing is we're working in an archetypal, symbolic, narrative structure of meaning that reflects subjective meaning, not objective truth. So if we were talking about something related to objective truth, like mathematics, we could be very clear and concise about what we mean. 2 + 2 = 4. Very, very concise. But what we're doing is using symbolism to explore structures of the subjective psyche. And these things aren't clearly defined. They bleed into each other. And so we have to it's like swimming in a pool where you're sort of like getting your bearings and you have to swim around, figure out what things are. It's not quick and cut and dry like an objective analysis. This is about symbolic exploration. Anyway, that's just why. By the way, I know I'm going off on a tangent right now. I'm going to try not to do that because I want to get through this in a timely manner. So I'm going to try to move forward a little quicker than usual and not to go off on so many tangents. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about something that's kind of cool here, is that we can understand the court cards in terms of kind of like a fairy tale. So what do I mean by that in terms of a fairy tale? In terms of a fairy tale, you can think of the court cards as telling a story. The princess or page starts trapped or confined in the physical world, Malkuth, and is rescued by the knight in Tefereth, and together they get married and mature into the king and queen, Chokhmah and Bina. So you have the trapped princess who gets raised up or rescued by the knight, and they get married and become the king and queen. All right, two things about this. First is that, yeah, if you think of it literally like a father, mother, son, and daughter, this is obviously incestuous. But remember, this is symbolic. It's not literal. Tarot cards use symbolism, not literal relationships. Second, this classic fairy tale narrative is definitely outdated. The sort of like princess that needs to be rescued by a knight doesn't really match our modern perspectives today. But it's an interesting symbolic pattern nonetheless. And you can modify it to make it fit better. The princess can actively journey to meet the knight instead of being rescued. Or you could just ignore that narrative entirely. It's totally up to you. You don't have to think of it in those terms. I just thought it was kind of interesting and helpful perhaps for some people. Personally, because we had the king, queen, knights, and pages. Personally, I like viewing the knights and pages as being androgynous, not specifically gendered at all, because they're associated with the middle pillar. So they can be male, female, both, none, basically whatever resonates with you. All right. So just laying that out there. All right. So, but what about in terms of manifestation? What the heck did the court cards actually mean for you when it comes to this process of making things happen in the real world? Well, like I said before, that these cards represent different aspects of you, the parts that drive the entire process of manifestation. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Each court card corresponds to one of the four elements. All right? So kings correspond to fire, will, drive, creativity. Queens correspond to water, emotion, intuition, nurturing. Knights correspond to air, which thoughts, decisions, communication. And pages to earth, practicality, manifestation, action. Okay? So each of the court cards represents one of the four elements. Kings are fire, queens are water, knights are air, pages are earth. But you might be thinking, well, hold on, don't the suits already correspond to the four elements? And yeah, they do. So wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, and pentacles are earth. So you might be thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. Then what about the Queen of Wands? We said that the queen was water, but the wands are fire. How does that make sense? Well, here's what's really cool about this. Each court card represents an element within an element. So, for example, let's take the court cards of the wands, which represents fire. Okay, so let's take a look. So these are the wands, right? So we have wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. So the king, being fire, in the wands suit means that the king is fire of fire. Queens are water of fire. Knights are air of fire. And pages are earth of fire. And this, of course, applies to all the different suits, right? So they apply to all the different suits. And what essentially this means, or what this is saying, is that no matter what suit you are working in, is each suit or each process of manifestation that you're working in has the 4 elements embedded within it. And if that sounds a little confusing, let's talk about an example, okay? So let's say you want to manifest something. So you pick your main focus, or the element that represents the core goal of your manifestation. So for example, if you want to manifest something with like creativity or like a passion project, you'd focus on wands. If you want relationships, love, or like even like business partnership, that's water or cups. For something like brainstorming new ideas or intellectual breakthroughs, that would be air or swords. If you're looking for practical results like stability or money, financial security, that would be earth or pentacles. All right, so let's say that your goal is a new relationship. So what element and suit would you work with? Will water or cups? That would be what dominates. But remember what we learned before, and I didn't talk about it in this video, but what we learned before, if we're trying to manifest something, we're going to use the lessons in all 4 trees, but one's going to dominate. So like I said in previous videos, if your goal is a relationship, the water tree or cups tree, or in terms of the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, it's the world of Bria or Beria. That is what would dominate or sort of take center stage. But of course, you're going to use all 4 elements across all 4 worlds. But your main attention is going to be in the realm of cups or water. Okay? So let's take this example. In our example, we want a new relationship. And so we're going to, what's going to dominate here is this tree, right? So has all these lessons on it. That's going to be kind of what dominates. But the lessons from all the trees apply. All the trees have the lessons that apply. What the court cards remind you to do, right? Because this is water, but this is fire of water. This is water of water. This is air of water. This is earth of water. So the court cards are there to remind you to integrate all 4 elements within the emotional realm. So for example, you want a new relationship. Okay. Well, we have the 4 elements that are needed to make that occur. The king is fire of water. This means the willful drive, the fiery drive within the realm of emotions and relationships. You need passion, you need confidence, and fire, energy within your relationships. The queen is water of water. This is about what? Emotion, intuition, and nurturing within your relationship. Tap into your heart and intuition and the connections that you make. Water of water. Night is air of water. This is that you need communication and ideas that are applied to emotions and relationships to make decisions consciously in the relationships that you encounter. Air of water. Page is earth of water. And so remember, earth is about practical action. So it's practical action in the realm of whatever emotional thing or relationship related thing you're trying to manifest. So it means take practical steps, earth, to put yourself out there, meet new people, set up dates to ground your emotional desire, water in reality. So basically, the court cards remind you that no matter what your goal is, whether it's relationships, money, new ideas, creative projects, you have to engage and integrate all 4 aspects of yourself: willpower, fire; emotional and intuitive connection, water; thoughtful communication, decisions; planning, air; and practical action, earth. So the 4 court cards act as your internal engine, keeping all the aspects balanced and making sure that you're using your full potential in the manifestation process. So do you see how the minor arcana, the 1 through 10 in each of the suits, represents stages in the process of manifestation? And the court cards represent the energies in the background making that happen. So each of the court cards has a specific lesson to teach us. One thing that I want you to note is notice how some are perfectly at home in their element, while others can feel out of place. So for example, like, if you have a water of water that's in your element, do you have fire of water? You're out of your element there, right? So with pages and knights, when things are out of their element, this can lead to clashes or challenges. But the kings and queens usually refer to integration and mastery. All right? So if this sounds a little abstract, don't worry. Remember, this is all going to make sense as we go forward. And I'm sorry if I'm hopefully not going too fast, but I'm trying to do these quicker here. All right, so let's talk about the pages. Now, the pages are personally my favorite among the court cards. I think that they're really cool. I like them a lot. So let's put them out here so you can see them. So we have the Page of Wands, the Page of Cups, the Page of Swords, and the Page of Pentacles. Now, the reason why I like the pages a lot is because they're the action takers. They're the movers. The pages are like, hey, let's get things going. Let's get things started. So remember, each page is associated with Malkuth, or the physical world, and the element of earth. So they're all about practicality and going out and putting your plans in action. But there's a catch to this, is that the pages are also young and inexperienced. So you can think of pages as like the fool of the court cards. They're enthusiastic and they're adventurous and they want to go out and get things done. They're ready to go, but they're also going to make a few mistakes along the way. But that's okay. They're learning. So let's take a look at each of the pages and see how they actually show up, practically speaking. All right. So let's take a look at the pages. The first one we're going to look at is the Page of Wands. And I'm going to zoom in, and I just have to move it over because my camera won't move. Okay, so the Page of Wands is what? Earth of fire. Page is earth, wands are fire, so the Page of Wands is earth of fire. The Page of Wands represents fiery enthusiasm and creative energy. All right, so you can see that this page here is pretty confident, dressed in clothes that have salamanders on it, which is symbols of fire and transformation. And they're looking up intently at the top of their wand, where fresh leaves are sprouting out, symbolizing new growth and potential. Practically, this page is about taking your creativity out into the world. So the page represents things like launching a new project, starting a YouTube channel, or stepping on the stage for the first time. But remember, they're very new to all this, so they're probably going to make mistakes along the way. Maybe they'll announce the project too early before it's ready, or forget their lines during a performance. but that's okay. You're going out there, you're actually doing it, and you're learning by experience. All right, so that's what the Page of Wands is all about. So hopefully you can begin to see how right, the page is the earth applied to fire, the practicality of, and action applied to creative, fiery endeavors. So next up, we have the Page of Cups. Now, this page is what? Earth of water. Earth of water. So this is the start of new emotional endeavors, like a relationship or friendships, or even intuitive explorations. You can have a relationship with yourself. But here's the thing: the groundedness of earth, combined with the dreamy nature of water, that can represent some challenges. See, the page stands near the water and is grounded on the shore, but you can see the waves rolling behind them. So this represents emotions and the unconscious mind. They're holding a cup, staring at a fish associated with Pisces, and this fish symbolizes the slippery, unpredictable nature of emotions and intuition. So, practically speaking, this page is the one who's actually going out on a first date, joining social events, reaching out to new friends. But their inexperience can sometimes make things awkward, like maybe accidentally picking a weird restaurant for a romantic date, or just misreading some signal of some kind. But they're out there and they're doing it and they're learning from it and they're trying to connect. So let's move right away over to the Page of Swords, which is what? Earth of air. So this person is driven by what? Swords, intellectual curiosity, communication, ideas, new ideas. They're standing with their sword drawn, which means what? It means that they're ready to make decisions and face whatever challenge comes their way. So clouds are in the background, indicating the swirling nature of thoughts and ideas. So in practice, the page is all about brainstorming, researching, coming up with inventive solutions. Even though, they're new to this, so maybe they have some weird business idea, like a social network for pets or something. It's actually not a bad idea. Or rush into start a plan before thinking it through fully. So yeah, some of the ideas might flop, but the point is they're out there experimenting, communicating, and actually learning through experience. All right, so then we have the Page of Pentacles, and I'll move it over here so we can see it better. So the Page of Pentacles is what? Earth of Earth. So finally, the page here is the most grounded. The page is completely in their element. They stand firmly on the ground. They're looking at the pentacle that they're studying, and they're surrounded by fertile land and mountains representing stability, practicality, long-term potential. So practically speaking, the page is making concrete moves in terms of practical, sending out job applications, building their spreadsheet, coming up with a budget, gathering materials that they need for a new business, hands-on stuff. Now, of course, they still might overlook some minor details because they're just starting out, but they're grounded and they're quick to learn and quick to adjust. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of start getting a clear picture of what this is all about here. We can see that the pages are the aspect of groundedness, practicality, and taking action on something new, and they are inexperienced in the realm of each of these worlds or elements, whether it's creative projects, relationships, new ideas, or finances. So with that in mind, let's talk about the knights. So let's bring out the knights here. So the knights are very dynamic. We have the Knight of Wands. We have the Knight of Cups. We have the Knight of Swords. And we have the Knight of Pentacles. Now remember, what do the knights represent? What's their element? It's air. And knights are all about movement and momentum. Pages are about groundedness and practicality and getting things going. Knights are about the movement and momentum. How is that associated with air? Well, think about how your mind is always racing, especially if you're trying to meditate. Your thoughts are constantly darting around. That's the kind of energy the knights bring. They're also associated with Tiferet or Tifereth on the Tree of Life. And that's the core or organizing center. So basically, like if the pages got things rolling, the knights are going to keep it moving forward. The knights, picture the knights as like the backbone of your personal kingdom. They're armored and ready and going to help you move ahead and progress. So let's take a look first at the Knight of Wands. Let's zoom in so we can get a better look at the Knight of Wands. So remember, Knight is associated with air, which is associated with movement. This is what? Air of fire. Air of fire. So the Knight of Wands, air of fire, is about rapid, passionate movement. And fire and air are an excellent match because fire, energy, and ambition can fuel air, thought, and the intellect. So because they're a good match for each other, take a look at this knight. This knight is charging forward, ready to conquer, with a cloak blowing behind him, symbolizing motion. And their tunic is decorated with salamanders. Again, the symbol of fire, passion, creativity, transformation. There's a desert landscape that's, further emphasizing the heat and intensity of the card's fiery nature. And so this card is about moving towards your goals with enthusiasm and confidence. But there is a catch here because the fire coupled with air can also make the knight impulsive, reckless, or arrogant if you're not careful. So what this card is telling you is harness this energy wisely and you're going to make powerful progress. Just don't be reckless, impulsive, or arrogant. You're seeing how these elements are interacting to form a certain energy and provide you with a certain lesson or understanding in this process of manifestation. Okay? So that was the Knight of Wands. Let's move over to the Knight of Cups. So let's take a look at the Knight of Cups. The Knight of Cups is what? Air of water. And so the Knight of Cups is very romantic, very dreamy, very empathetic. They're about emotional connection and idealism. But air, right, which is intellect and consciousness, mixed with water, which is intuition, emotions, the unconscious, can present some challenges. Notice this knight moves way slower than the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands had air and fire. Air, movement, fire, energy. It's a good pairing. Here, we have air and water, which represents some challenges because air is like consciousness and water is like the unconscious. So this knight is moving a lot slower. So they're still making forward movement, but you'll notice that there's a stream of water that it has to cross, representing challenges. So the knight is holding the cup steadily. He's not spilling a drop. This symbolizes emotional management. And the wings on the knight's helmet, again, show the airy nature of this card. And so this is always thinking about relationships, dreams, and emotional aspects. But what this is telling you, the warning here, is be careful not to get lost in fantasies or unrealistic expectations. You need to stay grounded or you'll be swept away by dreamy, unrealistic fantasies rather than practical reality. All right, let's move over to the Knight of Swords. Now, the Knight of Swords is what? Heir of air. So the Knight of Swords is really in their element. It's moving even faster than the Knight of Wands. So this is pure intellectual power, unstoppable forward momentum, Heir of air completely at home in the element, thought and movement combined. So the knight is charging ahead really fast, sword drawn, ready to take on anything and everything. You can't see, but if you have one, I always recommend having these cards in front of you when you watch these videos. The horse is even kind of looking back at the rider, kind of like, damn, dude, maybe chill a little bit. So the knight is fearless, assertive, confident. It's about swift action, swift decisions, intellectual courage, but also saying, just be careful you're not moving too fast. Don't act rashly or recklessly. So there's a quote by General Patton that fits the Knight of Swords perfectly. And that quote is, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week." That's exactly the energy that the Knight of Swords is talking about. Harness that energy, but don't let the impulsiveness get the best of you. Go out there, get that thing done. Don't wait around. Waiting around for something perfect or ideal, which, well, who would do that? Probably the Knight of Cups might do that. The Knight of Swords is like, no. A decent plan that we do now is better than a perfect plan that we do next week. Or for some people, never end up doing it because they're constantly trying to perfect it. All right, let's move over to the Knight of Pentacles. Okay. And we're going to move this over so that you can get a closer look at this. The Knight of Pentacles is what? Heir of earth. And this is where things get tricky because air and earth do not mix easily together in elemental terms. Your thoughts might be active, but translating those thoughts into practical action can be tough. Notice this knight's horse is completely stopped, feet firmly on the ground and looking out ahead. The knight is staring at the pentacle, very carefully considering their next move. So this symbolizes steady progress, responsibility, and diligence. But there is a danger. The card is saying, don't get stuck in your head, endlessly planning without action. Remember that thinking alone isn't going to achieve your goals. You have to actually get out there and move forward. If you can do that, then the knight is about steady, reliable progress towards building something lasting and secure. All right. So those are the knights. They keep your ideas, emotions, actions, and ambitions constantly moving. They're your internal drive with challenges, but absolutely essential to turning your dreams into reality. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the queens. Now, do you see how the pages and the knights Like the pages are out there doing stuff, but they're completely new. And the knights have that continued movement and momentum, but there's still like a lot of challenges, right? So you can see that with the pages and knights, when we're talking in terms of elements, when the elements are elements that can conflict with each other, challenges arise. But the queens and the kings are different. We're going to see with the kings, the queens and the kings, when you have opposing elements, it's going to not be about conflict, but rather more about integration or stabilization. So let's talk about the queens. You can think of the queens as kind of like the empresses of the court cards. Remember the empress in the major arcana? Nurturing. So the queens represent water, and on the tree of life are associated with Binah. Binah is the great mother, which is the nurturing energy of the tree of life. So the queens are about emotions, intuition, care, and integration, and bringing things together into a whole. So the queens are essentially like the guides that nurture your goals and ensure emotional alignment throughout the manifestation process. So let's talk about the queens. That's the kings. We're the queens here. We have the Queen of Wands. We have the Queen of Cups. We have the Queen of Swords. And we have the Queen of Pentacles. Let's start with the Queen of Wands. This is what? Queen, water, wands, fire. So the Queen of Wands is what? Water of fire. Now remember, water, fire, you think, oh, opposites clashing. But queens are integrated. So the queen is a powerful blend of that fiery passion and the nurturing water. So you can see that her throne is decorated with lions, symbolizing strength and courage and leadership. She holds a sunflower, representing warmth, creativity, and energy. And look at her feet. I love that there's a little kitty. See a little kitty? Fun fact, this cat is inspired by an actual real kitty named Snuffles. This cat's name is Snuffles. It's true. Look it up. So the cat basically symbolizes intuition, but also what? Friendship with her shadow self. She's befriended her shadow self. So the queen is well integrated and in touch with her real self, her true self. Even though fire and water are usually opposites, with the Queen of Wands, they're integrated. And what the Queen of Wands is saying, to embrace your authentic self, express your hidden qualities openly, explore your inner world, and passionately nurture your creative goals. It's about the integration between your outward ambition and internal emotional intuition, and the power that comes when you integrate those things together. Oh, I didn't zoom in. Let's zoom in so you can get a better look at Snuffles. Snuffles. Okay, that's all. But you can see all the elements that I discussed. But now let's turn to the Queen of Cups, which is another really beautiful card. Her cup is different than all the other cups. So the Queen of Cups is what? Water of water. And so the queen is very at home here, fully in her element, emotional depth and intuition. And now notice how intricate her cup is and how beautiful it is. Now, if you take a very close look, you can see that the handles look like two angels guarding the contents. And this is an allusion to the Ark of the Covenant, which symbolizes that it holds sacred, hidden secrets of the soul. This is the only cup in the deck that is closed, but she gazes deeply into it, able to see through it and its secrets with her mind's eye. There are babies carved onto her throne, meaning to nurture your inner child and keep joy alive. And this is about empathy, compassion, intuition, nurturing. But to remember that while caring for others is a strength, the Queen of Cups says to also prioritize your own emotional needs and set healthy boundaries. Don't neglect yourself while you nurture others. The Queen of Swords is water of air. And the Queen of Swords is all about clarity and intellect, beautifully balanced with emotional intelligence. So she has butterflies on her crown and on the throne, symbolizing air, intellect, transformation. She's sitting straight up, very direct, very commanding, holding her sword upright and ready. She's not afraid to speak her mind. This queen values logic, reason, evidence, clear communication, but she integrates it with emotion, integrates emotion with intellect, and encourages decisions here based on clear thinking. So her approach can sometimes feel blunt, sometimes it can feel harsh, but it comes from a place of honesty. And she's also about self-sufficiency, independence, and blending compassion with an analytical mind. All right, so that's where we have the Queen of Swords, water of air. And by the way, if you're wondering, like, what does this mean in a practical sense? I'll give you an example when we get near the end. Okay, so now let's turn to the Queen of Pentacles. I'll move it over so you can get a closer look. So the Queen of Pentacles is, of course, water of earth. And what's water? Well, nurturing. And what's Pentacles? Practicality. So she's nurturing, warm, and practical. She blends the emotional, nurturing water aspect with the grounded stability of earth. And so she creates abundance and security. Her throne and surroundings have flowers, and all this stuff is growing, symbolizing prosperity, fertility. There's a little red rabbit hopping nearby, a little bunny in the corner. Unfortunately, I don't think the bunny has a name, but there's a bunny, meaning fertility and action. And so the Queen's about a balanced approach to life. Emotional well-being, nurturing yourself and others, and applying practical steps to manifest your goals for lasting security. All right. So the Queens are all about nurturing and integration in terms of manifestation. So it's keeping all these things harmonized: heart, mind, emotion, logic, creativity, practicality. That's essentially what the Queens are. So let's move to the Kings. Now the Kings, you can think of the Kings as like the emperors of the court cards. Remember the Emperor from the major arcana? So the Kings are kind of like the emperors of the court cards. They're associated with fire, and on the tree of life, the Sephirot of Chokhmah, or Hokmah. And Hokmah is the sphere of pure energy and true purpose and your power self. So the Kings represent mastery, stability, leadership, willpower, and importantly, purpose. These guys are powerful and driven. One of the lessons here is just remember not to become rigid or inflexible. So let's take a look at the King of Wands, the King of Cups, King of Swords, and the King of Pentacles. So we're going to start off by looking at the King of Wands. Let's zoom in for a closer look. And what are kings? They're fire. What are wands? They are fire. So the King of Wands is fire of fire. Fire of fire. At home in his element. He's on a throne decorated with salamanders and lions. Salamanders, fire transformation. Lions, strength and courage. And you can see his crown is fiery. It's shaped into flames, symbolizing mastery and divine purpose. So this king is all about leadership, vision, creative power, charismatic, not afraid to take actions, inspiring to others. This is about self-confidence, strong purpose, passion to follow through. And most importantly, he's telling you to pursue your true passion and purpose, not superficial distractions, but the things that set your soul on fire. Let's move to the King of Cups, which is what? King, fire, cups, water. King is fire of water. Now, this is a really fast-ending one. Why? Because he combines fire and water, elements usually seen as opposites, but not so with the king. The king has mastered emotional stability and self-control. Look at where he's sitting. He's sitting calmly on a stable throne in the middle of the freaking ocean with waves all around him. And he has a fish hanging around his neck, symbolizing mastery over the watery realms of the emotions and the unconscious. So the King of Cups is telling you to master your emotions, remain balanced even in chaotic and emotionally turbulent times, use emotional intelligence and wisdom. He's a symbol of emotional maturity and strength and inner calm. And what he also points to is focusing on real, meaningful relationships that fulfill you instead of something vapid. All right, let's look at the King of Swords, which is what? Fire of air. So the King of Swords is the master of intellect and reason. He combines the energy of fire with the clear analytical thinking of air. His throne has butterflies near the top, symbolizing transformation through intellect and clarity. And the king is known, this one is known for clear thinking, strong communication, cutting through the bullshit and the confusion to reveal truth. This is about being a visionary leader, intellectually brilliant, again, inspiring. So he's telling you, use your intellect strategically, communicate effectively, use logic to dig into the matter and get to the heart of the truth. All right, let's move over to the King of Pentacles, which is fire of earth. So the King of Pentacles is all about practical mastery and stability and the abundance that comes from that. He combines the fiery ambition with the grounded practicality of earth. So notice all the grapes. Grapes symbolize growth and prosperity and wealth. But that comes from what? A solid foundation and a hell of a lot of hard work. Also, his throne has the symbol of Taurus, symbolizing again stability and strength and determination. So this is about responsible leadership, financial success, material security. That true long-lasting prosperity is built on solid foundations, steady efforts, earth, combined with powerful ambition, fire. For true lasting success, you need long-term dedication and practical action and focused, purposeful energy. So the kings guide you in mastering each element and channeling your inner fire and purpose to manifest lasting, meaningful, purposeful success. All right. So those are the court cards. That's what they mean in the context of each of the suits. But let's take an example to see like how this is actually, what this actually means for us. So let's see. We're going to use the court cards here. And let's use an example. Let's say that you want to manifest a new relationship. So if you want to manifest a new relationship, what's the emphasized element? What's the element you focus on? Water and cups. The element of emotions, intuition, the unconscious, right? So if we want a new relationship, this is the one that would stand out. So let's move these aside for now. And so we would have here, let's see. We have the Page of Cups. We have the Knight of Cups. The Queen of Cups. And the King of Cups. So here's what each of the court cards from the cup suits tells us in this scenario where we want a new relationship. This keeps coming off it. So anyway, so we start the Page of Cups. What is the Page of Cups saying? The Page of Cups is saying, hey, you want to manifest a new relationship? Then get out there and start meeting people. Go on dates. Talk to new people. But remember, emotions can be slippery, like the fish in the cup. You can have awkward moments, but that's okay. Maybe you pick a restaurant your date doesn't like or tell a joke that nobody laughs at, but that's okay. Just keep trying. Don't let the little mistakes hold you back, but actually take action. The Knight of Cups, which is located here, telling you to use that idea of romance to drive you forward. Let your romantic dreams inspire your actions and plan thoughtful dates or write, heartfelt messages. Express your feelings openly. But don't drift into unrealistic fantasies. Stay grounded enough to build something real and lasting. We have the Queen of Cups. The Queen of Cups is about deeply nurturing your relationships. Be compassionate, be empathetic, really connect with your emotions and intuition. Listen to the other person, support your partner, and share openly. But don't lose yourself in caring for others. Set healthy boundaries and prioritize your own emotional needs as well. The King of Cups tells you to master your emotions, especially when facing the turbulent waters, like what can happen, disagreements, misunderstandings, or even a breakup. Stay calm, use emotional intelligence, use wisdom, and handle those conversations with kindness and openness, and keep yourself balanced and stable no matter what challenges arise. And he also reminds you to aim for genuine connections and real love. Don't settle for something superficial or vapid. Build a partnership that's authentic and fulfilling. So you can get an idea of how these 4 court cards that represent the 4 elements of earth, air, water, and fire that act as the driving force behind whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, where the minor arcana actually represents how, in what way it manifests. This is the fuel that governs that process, and you want to make sure that you're using all 4 elements in an integrated way. And remember, why are we even learning all this? What does it matter? Is because, remember, as I said in my other videos, but if you haven't watched them, the reason why we're doing this is because what we are doing is using symbols to communicate with our unconscious mind and installing these lessons and archetypal patterns in our unconscious so that our unconscious is working with our consciousness, so that we're more likely to actually, like, just learning about this and sitting at home all day. Here, let's put it like this. If you just study this and just learn it and then sit at home all day, nothing's going to happen. But guess what? If you were to truly integrate it, the Page of Cups is saying, don't sit at home all day, go the fuck out. And so the Page of Cups is telling you to go out. And so when you do go out, these lessons, these archetypal patterns are going to be instilled in your unconscious. And this will move you towards the goal that you want to achieve. It doesn't mean it's going to happen like magic. You actually have to go out there and make the decisions, do the things in the real world. But you have this structure that has been embedded symbolically with these lessons that will be in the background working with you. So you're installing this structure within your unconscious to be working with you in the background. And what the installation of the court cards is doing is telling you to balance the 4 elements in whatever it is that you're doing. And the 4 elements, of course, are balance your will and creativity with your emotions and your intuition and your intellect and communication and your practicality and action. Do all these things. Because even if you're working in water, you need all 4 elements in the realm of water. You need the fire of water, the water of water, the air of water, and the earth of water to actually get what it is that you want. So my friends, I hope you enjoy this. I think we're going to end it there. But yeah, those are the court cards. Very important to understanding how to be balanced and integrated within your journey of manifestation. If you guys want, maybe in the next video, we will talk about actual readings and things like that, which could be interesting. So if you guys want that, that is what we'll do. But as always, my friends, I hope you enjoyed my work. Remember to check out my books if you want to understand this stuff from a psychological perspective, not tarot, but just like higher states of consciousness, things like that. And consider becoming a member. See all the exclusive videos you can get access to, or free downloads, PDFs, stuff like that. Helps out the channel a lot. I really appreciate it. And follow me on Spotify. Thank you all so much. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Dallas, Nusalina, Celsus, Chris Magistus, Eric, they call me Trinity, ZM345, and everyone else. Thank you very much.